Welcome to the Jamross Political Podcast. We're here with Serena and Reese. And so today we are going to discuss about, once again, a weekly news topic of the A-level and GCSE scandal. Once again, the government have done yet another U-turn, reversing the system of algorithm and now put in place a self-teaching peer assessment. And so here today, we're with Serena Lola and Reese Jones, to discuss the matter. What do you think about this whole situation so far?
I mean, this whole situation has just been an absolute mess. And so many students across the UK have been affected and put through hell just because of an algorithm that decided our grades because of the area you live in. Like, where you come from shouldn't define how intelligent or smart you are. Just because you come from an area that's not as posh or not as overall well achieving doesn't mean your intelligence is less valued, doesn't mean that you're any less smart than someone who went to private school. And I've been affected by the downgrades. So many of my friends have, and they missed out on uni places, they missed out on apprenticeships, on jobs, on opportunities, just because we go to a public school and not a private school, which is not fair.
Yeah.
Your opinion?
And sort of coming off of that as well, it is a huge mess. And there should be sort of backup plans in place anyway. Like if something was to go wrong, then the government can fall back on. So if there was a huge amount of people that were getting their grades downgraded, there should be sort of systems in place for that. It's sort of like, well, everyone else has been downgraded for their grades. The requirements to sort of get people into the places they should have been able to get into before, they should be sort of adjusted to sort of account for that. So then people are sort of on a level playing field when it comes to it. So like you were saying, Serena, if you've gone to a public school or private school, it doesn't matter. You're on an equal playing field and have equal opportunity to get into the same places.
To look at it now, how did you two do? How were your grades? How were your mental health? How do you feel about the whole situation?
Well, I was in a fortunate enough position that even my downgraded grades still got me into the uni I wanted. So I got ABB, but my teacher's grades were A star AA, but I was lucky enough to still get into the uni. But I was still obviously disheartened that my 2 years of hard work were put down. Like, even though they are still amazing grades, ABB, as someone who constantly works at, higher grades, it still is disheartening. Like, no matter who you are, what grade you're getting, obviously it is a big kind of knock on your mental health, seeing a piece of paper kind of define your self-worth. I know that's not how it should be, but it's so ingrained into us students that it's the end of the world if you don't do amazing in exams and you don't get that piece of paper that says like A on it. So yeah, it definitely is hard and definitely is tough, but I was fortunate enough not to be as badly affected as other people were.
Give me a second. Okay, Reese, go.
So on my course, it's pass, merit, distinction, or fail. So it's not like ABB or anything like that. I ended up with a merit. So I don't know if I ended up getting my grade downgraded or I never got told. But all I know is that I passed with a merit, which gets me onto my next year on the course.
And so how did you feel throughout this whole crisis?
Throughout the whole process, like sort of leading up to the results,
Yeah.
I didn't know, like, I was kind of sure that I was going to pass. I knew that for sure. But other than that, it was kind of like, whatever happens, happens. Like, I'd handed in all like the paperwork and coursework that I had. So after sort of that cutoff date, it was sort of, well, it's just up to whoever grades it now.
And so looking at this at a neutral perspective, with all this mounting stress and mental health problems on each pupil around the country, do you think it's worth stressing so much over a piece of paper and some rich blokes at the top wanting grades to make their reputation better, do you think it is worth it? Do you think it is worth having a piece of paper saying, I am qualified for this job?
I mean, a piece of paper with a letter on it should not define who you are, your intelligence, your self-worth, what you're capable of doing. But the society that we live in and the structures that kind of create it have ingrained into us that it should define us. And obviously that isn't right. Not everyone is suited to the way that the education system is run, is built. Like, people learn in different ways. People are better at some things than others. And, you know, getting an A star in English and maths should not mean that you're more qualified for a job than someone who maybe has like 5 years experience in the work industry but doesn't have A levels or GCSEs. And I don't know, it's a really difficult situation, and it's all just very complicated. But a piece of paper should not define your self-worth and who you are. And higher education and things like uni are not suited to everyone and is not meant for everyone. So if you want to go down that route, go ahead, do it. If not, then you don't need to. And Reese died.
Yep.
So, personal opinion of sort of the whole situation and sort of should grades define you? I think while they shouldn't define you as a person, I think it's a good thing to have. You know what I mean? Because there are some people out there that will say they can do something, but sometimes, how do I put it?
I mean, I guess it teaches you the kind of hard-working ethic in a way, having to work towards a goal, having to work towards something, but also getting a letter on a piece of paper, obviously again shouldn't define who you are as a person and shouldn't define your self-worth and your capabilities and what you're able to do. Because
what I would say is that there are people with a few learning difficulties, and so they do have the work ethic and they do have the drive and all the things that Reese have described. However, they are blocked simply by a thing that is out their control, and they should not be pushed down because of the simple fact that they don't go along with the agenda of a school.
Yeah, no, like the system of how schools work and how we work towards these like big exams at the end of the years obviously is not tailored to everyone's capabilities and their way of learning and their way of doing things. And it kind of only caters to a small percentage of people who can kind of get by in that system. So yeah, it does put them at a disadvantage and it's not fair. And there should be changes to the system, but as to what those changes should be, it is hard to kind of create a standardized system which can test everyone in a fair and equal way. But definitely the system we do have now does not work for everyone and is not tailored to their capabilities and intelligence.
And what are your opinions regarding the rich blokes getting better grades than yourself?
That's not fair. It's literally not fair. What, just because I go to a public school and I'm from what they call a deprived area doesn't mean my A grade is worth less than an A grade from a private school. They've already got the upper hand of going to a private school and having money and having contacts, and people in state schools have to work a lot harder to get to the same places that they do, the same top universities, and it's not fair. They're kind of, obviously, yes, they're in an advantaged position already, which puts them above us. So we have to work even more hard, and then being put down just because of the area you live in is not fair. When in fact we probably work harder than they work, which is just it's really not fair.
Completely agreeable. Your opinions, Reese?
Well, my opinion is pretty much alongside Serena's. It is quite unfair that sort of how you do in the world and how you do in society nowadays is based on how much money you got in your pocket and what kind of school you go to. And sort of, if you've got money, you can get better opportunities in certain areas, and people that go to sort of public schools and that have to work 10, 20 times harder to get to the same position. And I think it's, I wouldn't, I don't know how to word it. I would say it's probably, I don't know where I was going with this. But yeah, my points alongside Serena's here. It is quite unfair.
So, looking into this further, a system that was created by elite individuals who have gone to private schools, do you think that they have put favoritism towards their friends and family who have gone to the same establishments? Do you think that it is a fact?
I mean, yes, in a way, because obviously, if you know people and you have those contacts, it does make it a lot easier to get, the opportunities to go to, better schools, get a better education, go to a better uni. If you obviously know the people and you have those contacts and you have the money, it makes it a lot easier. And I guess, yeah, there is kind of elitism and favoritism to those students and to those people who have been brought up in that society, which obviously is not fair and does make it harder for the rest of the world and the country. So, yeah.
Last point is, who do you think should be accountable? Do you think that Boris Johnson and his government have done so many U-turns in this whole crisis? Sent a report in 2012, I believe. It stated that extra recruitment needs to be provided for any circumstance of a virus pandemic. That was in 2012. We're in 2020, and they have failed in completely every single aspect in this crisis, going every single turn and corner and doing a U-turn. They have done a U-turn now. Under Boris Johnson's government, we have Williams. Who do you think should have the responsibility of this whole disaster of the exam crisis?
I mean, so many people were involved, and it's such a complicated situation. But obviously, the governing bodies like the exam boards and obviously the government should take some responsibility for the kind of mess that they've created, because so many students have been affected, so many people have been disadvantaged. So there obviously does need to be some sort of accountability. And yes, they did a U-turn to kind of make it right, but the situation shouldn't have happened in the first place. If they had just given the teacher assessed grades in the first place, this would have never happened.
The only problem I do have is that looking at it at a neutral perspective, how on earth do you come up with a system that gives favor to the elite and no favor to the poor? So how logically do you come out and say this is a fair system when it is not? How do you create a system like that? Can you please tell me?
I wish I knew. I really do. It's not a logical system. It's not a fair system. It's completely illogical. It doesn't make sense to base grades off your postcode and your area. It just doesn't make sense.
Your thoughts, Reese?
In all fairness, it is a completely unfair system. And sort of seeing how it's affecting everyone from sort of different areas and how the government's basically messed up how they're trying to fix it. And sort of, while they've tried to fix it, they've kind of also made things worse by trying to fix it as well, if you know what I mean. How, like, it shouldn't have got to the place where they had to fix it in the first place. It should have already been a system that could be fallen back on and done reliably without any problems, and here we are with problems. So I think while the government did do a U-turn there is obviously quite a lot of accountability within different areas of the government. I don't think the whole government in itself had much influence on it, but I think sort of members of education sector and sort of exam boards, Boris himself actually, could be held to a certain extent accountable for what happened.
I mean, kind of adding on to that, this is a very unique situation which hasn't happened before.
Yes, we've heard this debate once and twice.
There's never been no exams.
It does not matter when you have a report in 2012 stating that this was all going to happen. How do you not become prepared when you have a report stating that this was going to happen? How do you make about, I don't know how many U-turns, how many U-turns do you need to do and turn your nose up and say, oh, we're sorry, and then correct it? How is this acceptable? I don't want the same old rubbish argument, oh, this is a unique time. There are people and families and children who have been affected hugely. And to be told that this is a unique time is an absolute load of rubbish. The government should take responsibility because these are the lives of so many. And even if it's a unique situation, it's their duty to govern under any circumstance and not U-turn like an elegant man in a park. Okay? Your opinions, Reese?
I think you said it all, to be honest.
I really appreciate it. Reese, a man with only a few words, but very effective. Serena, a person that talks. And I, a blabberer. No, I just talk, okay? And shout. But who cares? Any other things you have to say?
I mean, this has all been a crazy hell of a situation, and well, we kind of made it through, so go us.
Reese?
Well, this is the new normal. No clue how long this thing's going to go on for, so I think we try and fix the problems we got with it just now and try and make it the easiest we can going forward.
And so if this is the new normal, how can we adapt for the next generation? Will they do exams or will they just be based on coursework? Because we've got the next generation of year 11s coming up now, and we've got the year 11s currently who are going to A-levels, and then we have the A-levelers going on to uni who will have to do tests, I believe, monthly. So if we're not trained to be good masters at taking tests, then how are we going to cope when this whole situation will dissolve? In your opinions?
I mean, this whole situation has been a learning experience and has taught us that, you know, more focus needs to be put into the education system and how it's run and how, you know, we test students' abilities. And taking constant exams probably isn't the best way to go forward. It's going to put way too much stress on students who are already stressed out enough as it is.
That was not the question.
Sorry?
That was not the question.
What was your question?
The question was how we're going to cope once this COVID crisis dissolves with pupils not taking exams and not being trained to take exams, how they're going to cope once exams are introduced. So if we're talking about a GCSE pupil
who's never taken
A-level and they haven't done a major exam,
yeah.
how are they going to deal with it? Because they're not trained, they don't have any experience to do that. So there's going to be a downfall as well there.
Well, I mean, they must have taken mock exams, right?
Mock exams are not as frightening as a GCSE real exam.
Yeah, no, obviously, but I don't know. Obviously, how can you train them to take exams? I don't know.
Constant exam taking, constant experience of the past of doing SATs or doing mocks or GCSEs, etc. How are they going to be suited for the next step? That is the question.
I think possibly going forward, the people that have taken the mocks, I think will be realizing that the importance of their marks was a lot higher than what they thought. So I think from this, they'll be taking all their exams just as seriously because they've learned from this, we didn't take the mocks seriously, and now we have this sort of weird situation where the grades are kind of here and there.
Yeah, so I guess any in-class assessments or any mock exams would be taken a lot more seriously, because I know myself, I did not try in my mocks whatsoever. I got D's. I failed my mock exams. And so I guess those will probably be taken a lot more seriously and done like proper exams to kind of prepare them for that. And yeah, but there's not really much else you can do. You can't give them a real exam until they actually have to do a real exam. And so I guess it's all about finding different ways to kind of test students that kind of shows them in their best way.
So that is pretty much this week's episode. I would like to say thank you to the two of you for taking up your time to talk to me, the screaming lunatic on this podcast. Next week's podcast will be a mystery because I have not figured it out yet. However, to overview this whole discussion today, the people have spoken, they are affected, and they are annoyed, and they're coming after Williams and Sir Boris. We are coming after you with revenge. And so that is the episode this week. I appreciate everyone's support, and thank you very much. And see you next week. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.